Have you ever woke up at 3 a.m. wondering if the life you're living is truly fulfilling? This is the Your Next Success podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Sangal. I am a life-first career coach and strategist on a mission to normalize questioning your career, because I believe each of us is made on purpose for a purpose only we can fulfill. The longer we live out of alignment with who we are, what we do best, and why we are here, the more we miss out, and the more the world misses out on what only we can give. The Your Next Success podcast is where we explore how to build a career that truly fuels your life. We talk about self-discovery, smart job search strategies, professional growth, and you will hear stories from people who have navigated big career transitions themselves, so you can create a life-first career and become your own version of authentic success. Jen Mecham is a speaker, mindset coach, and consultant who helps individuals and organizations unlock their potential through elevated thinking. Her journey was profoundly shaped by a final gift from her father, a copy of the film The Secret, which inspired her to explore the power of the human mind. Today, she is trained in Bob Proctor's Thinking into Results program and leads seminars through her company, Elevated Thinking, empowering others to expand their vision, shift their mindset, and achieve meaningful success. In this episode, Jen shares how quiet dissatisfaction can become an invitation to growth. She reflects on the legacy of her father, the beliefs that shape our lives, and the mindset shifts that open the door to new possibilities. This conversation explores what it means to elevate your thinking, redefine success, and pursue a life aligned with purpose and fulfillment. Hey, Jen Mecham, welcome to Your Next Success. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time now.
Oh, thank you, Carolyn. It's so great to see you here. I love your show. And we've met in person a few times, and I just love your energy.
Oh,
Thank you for having me.
I love yours as well. So for those who don't know, Jen and I met at the National Speakers Association North Carolina chapter has meetups. The Raleigh area is every second Saturday. So if anyone is in the RTP area, please join us at the second Saturday meetups. We would love to see you. And it's a group for speakers, aspiring speakers, anyone who wants to get better with their speaking. Totally going to edit that later. Anyway, Jen, it was to meet you there, and I'm so excited to be talking to you today to share your story. Now, we will get to all of the amazing work that you do today as a coach, as a leader, as a guiding so many to have fulfilled lives and success. And let's start way back in your journey. Help us understand, where were you born? Where did you grow up? What was life like for, your very youngest self?
Okay. Yeah, well, I was born and raised in Utah, central eastern Utah, just about an hour out of Moab. A lot of people go there for national arches.
Yeah.
A pretty desert kind of life. But my father was a coal miner in Emery County, and that was life. Life was, I had two very loving parents, big family, 6 kids. That's Utah.
Yeah.
But my parents always struggled for money. So my dad, had this hard job of working in the coal mines. It's hard work, low pay. I mean, it's higher than a lot of industries but it's still paycheck to paycheck life. And we never, emergencies happen. We just never had money. It was always stressful. Money was always the stressor in our family. And to address this, my dad, in his off time, first let's go back to, why would he choose a life of coal mining? He was a welder, actually. He'd been told that working in the trades, he chose welding, would always provide a secure income. It would always be there. It would always be needed. And working in the coal mine industry, they would always need welders. So he bought into the idea that this would be a good, safe, secure job that would pay him for the rest of his life, would pay his retirement, health insurance, all of that. So he bought into that, but he was miserable. He hated it. Every day he hated those coal mines, but he stuck it out, and he worked his entire adult life in the coal mines there. And his off time, though, to his dream was to strike it rich by looking for gold in the mountains of Utah. And he spent most of his off time always looking for gold. And it wasn't until the end of his life that he actually was introduced to the film The Secret. And the messages in the film The Secret were so profound that it really hit him hard. It was like a gut punch to him. And it was like he learned all of a sudden that he bought into an idea that was wrong. In the film, they talk about the power of your thinking, and it's your thoughts that dictate your life. If you're thinking thoughts of abundance and success and greatness, then you will live that life. But if you are thinking of thoughts, it's your thoughts that'll pull you down to a life of struggle, hardship, poverty as well. So he was so passionate about us all having this message, getting this into our minds so that we wouldn't have to live a life of struggle like he did, that he made a copy of this film for all of us, telling us, go learn this, live a life of less struggle. And so that's what started me on this. But yeah, that's where I started out in life, was in the coal mining towns in Utah.
Now, growing up at your very youngest self, one of 6 kids, where were you in that order?
I was the second.
Oh,
So
wow.
I had an older brother. He actually passed away when I was 15. He was 16. And it really shaped our family. It really turned our family into a different direction. So my parents, not surprisingly, they were Mormon. They were raised Mormon. I was raised Mormon. But my parents decided to leave the church when I was a child. So we were kind of had that perspective of being on the outside looking in. But it was, you still have this thought of the ideas that you were taught from the time you're little about God and our purpose here, and, beliefs that we're taught about why, a lot of judgment, things like, God's watching you and heaven and hell and all of that stuff. So, you have these ideas of what life is supposed to be. But when my brother died, he was accidentally, it was an accidental gunshot. And it was really hard to watch my parents go through that, losing a child. My parents found their way out of that through learning about stories that documented cases of where people died, and it was documented that they died, and then they came back and they shared their stories of what they saw in the afterlife. And it was these stories that really shaped my parents to teach us a different way about our purpose in life. So a lot of those stories were about people when they passed away. It was all about love and how great it was, and there was no judgment. And people have their own beliefs on if these after death or near death experiences are true or not. But my parents, to them, they felt real. And when I started reading some of these messages, there's a lot of things that happen that you're like, you can't really explain. But it really provided our family a lot of comfort to know, like, life isn't about judgment, about good and evil, and it's just about living a good life, loving each other, being there for everyone, and just really appreciating this life, because it does go by fast. And to know, it just provided my parents this comfort that they needed to know that Josh, my brother, was fine. He was there. He was having a great time. And, it really helped them deal with that sadness.
That's so, firstly, thank you for sharing. Your brother sounds like and your parents sound like they were into this continuous improvement and kind of learning and trying to pass along those messages as they received him. Now, what about you? what kind of activities did you enjoy both in school and out of school or at home as you were growing up?
So growing up, oh, I had so much fun. Lived on my bike all the time, which kind of makes me sad now to see the kids just stuck on their electronics indoors most of the time. I can't imagine, but I was outside with my friends all the time on my bike, just living it, living the dream.
Yeah.
Even when we were poor, everyone there, most of their parents worked in the coal mines, so we didn't have a sense of difference then because we just all played.
Yeah.
But we moved away for a time when my grandparents passed away, but my dad, well, always stayed there at the mines. And it's interesting. I never saw my dad in his coal mining gear
Oh,
because he always showered and changed before he left the mines. And it's an interesting story, but the one time I saw him in his coal mining gear, and I don't have a picture of my dad in his coal mining gear because he didn't take pictures either. So, but the interesting thing is the one time I did see him in his coal mining gear was on my 10th birthday. And it was the end of the day. We'd already gone to bed. So we'd had my birthday and then here comes Dad into our bedrooms. We all shared a room. And he was in his coal mining gear and had the coal dust and everything. He was dirty, and
yeah.
and he just felt our faces. And to my 10-year-old self, I didn't know why he was doing that. I thought maybe he felt bad that he missed my birthday. And it wasn't until the next morning that we found out why. And it was because there had been an explosion, fire at the coal mine. They killed 27 men that day. And my dad came home and just was so grateful that he was able to come home to his family, when so many of his friends lost their lives and so many of those kids would never see their dads again.
Oh, wow. And so you were sleeping and kind of woke up to this happening?
Yeah.
Wow.
To my dad coming in and just feeling our faces. And then we found out the next day what had happened. So, yeah, that was the Wilburg mine fire. That happened on my birthday when I was 10 years old. But that's
Wow.
why, that's the only time I ever saw him in his coal mining gear.
Yeah. And then I guess from your youngest viewpoint, kind of knowing your dad was working in the coal mines, knowing that a lot of your friends and their parents were working in the coal mines, did you have a vision of what you thought it meant to be an adult or what you were going to do as you were an adult or any sort of, success in any, were there dreams
right.
or visions and what was that from that youngest vantage point? And we'll get to what it is today later, but.
Right. So, of course, in school, I always had this this pull of trying to understand. So I loved school. I loved learning. I loved my teachers. I had a great time in my high school. I loved my friends. We had a great time, even though I was the non-Mormon in the mostly Mormon predominantly area. That I had great friends. And my memories are all, really, really fun memories of those times. But I was always drawn toward racism for some reason. I don't know why, but it always was something. There was always something there, and I studied it quite a bit. I didn't understand why there was racism. And I lived in Utah, which is not very diverse, or was there, or where I lived, but why racism existed. And so I started to kind of dip into that when I was in high school. And then when I got into college, that's what really pulled me. So my background in college was minority studies. I really wanted to learn more about racism, our history, the United States history of slavery. And I worked with my major professor to work with her. Her work was looking at racial socialization of Black and white children during the Jim Crow years. And that, my time, I went to Utah State for my bachelor's and for graduate school. I had a great time learning that. And with my professors, like really, they were from areas outside of Utah, and they really opened my eyes to really some great concepts, and I learned a lot. And that's what I assumed that's what my plan was. I'm going to teach this. So that's what pulled me out here to North Carolina. I had a plan to get my PhD in teaching minority history. But when I got here, I worked with an African-American woman who just kind of blew that off and said, well, you can't teach that. You're white. And even though all my professors were white teaching this, and I learned so much, I just thought, well, she's probably right. I'd have to go back out to these areas that are not very diverse to be able to teach this stuff. Because nobody would probably want to, think, I mean, what's my insight? I am white. So how can I relate to this history? Even though, I can teach it all day long. I know these stories and powerful stuff. My thinking at the time, though, was that she's probably right, and I wouldn't be able to get into this field. So I just dropped it, and I moved into healthcare research. And that's where I stayed. It was safe, comfortable. I mean, it was secure. A lot of research here in the RTP, but it wasn't very fulfilling. It wasn't my calling for sure. It was just it was a paycheck. And so I just lived this paycheck to paycheck life, not satisfying. I mean, some studies were more interesting than others for sure, but I just kept on that train. Just, okay, I should be satisfied. I'm living better than my parents lived. I'm living in a cookie cutter house. I was married, Utah, we get married early. So I was married at the age of 19. But I knew we were never right for each other from the very beginning. But I stayed in that marriage just because it's just those ideas of you should try to work it out, and it's better for the kids if you stay together and all of that stuff.
So in your youngest years, you thought being successful was going to be being educated and working in some sort of field or capacity is maybe what you had considered from the earliest stages.
Yeah, I always geared. Well, success was not marriage. It just happened.
Part of life. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It's part of life. But yeah, as far as my dream of what I love to do, I was always minority research. I was always trying to find out more about why racism existed.
How did you get even introduced, like being in a not very diverse Utah area? How did your knowledge and insight into all the beautiful diversity that the world has, how did that start to even come in? Was it through school or was it TV? Like, how did you even get introduced and start to have this fascination and desire to want to make a difference there?
Well, it was probably, popular culture. You see things, you're like, people that don't look like me are all over this world. And then I'd hear comments, small thinking, small towns. And I would just hear racist comments. And it just always, I remember from the time I was little, just hearing these comments and wondering why. And I remember sitting on my mom's lap one day, and she was reading Dr. Seuss's The Star-Bellied Sneetches. And it's the story about how these sneetches with stars lived better than the ones without stars. And so the ones without stars, here comes a man and says, hey, I can stamp a star on you so you live just like them. They're like, sweet, sign me up. So they're getting their stars. Well, then the star-bellied sneetches are like, hey, well, then we'll just take ours off then. We still want to be different. We want to be better than you. So the guy made a machine that took stars off, and it just went back and forth, And it was all about the concept of this group is better than that group, and we want to maintain that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, yeah. From the time I always wondered about that.
How did you even decide that you wanted to go to college? Being a coal miner's daughter, how was college even a consideration and an option? And yeah, tell me
How does that
more
come?
about that.
Well, it's high school discussed, and that was what everyone pushed. The way to get a better life is college. And I remember there was a poster in my guidance counselor's office that said, if you can't promise your daughter that her husband won't leave her or won't die or all of these things, then you can tell her she doesn't need to go to college.
Oh, wow.
And so that was, that was important. And I loved to study and I wanted to study. So it was just natural for me to want to go into school.
Did you live there? Like, was it far enough away? I don't know the geography of Utah very, very much. Did you live on campus? Yeah.
No, so I got married really young at 19, right after
right.
I graduated.
Yeah.
And the guy I married, he was from Logan, which is about 4 hours away. And so I went to Utah State, up there in the mountains, which is just below the Idaho border.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay. So lots of studying, learning, getting fascinated by minority studies, then achieving your undergraduate and master's degree, and then you decide to come to North Carolina. Was there a draw? Were you still married at the time? Was there a draw for
Yep.
him as well?
He just came basically for me. So, yeah, I worked with my major professor on a study, the Behind the Veil Oral History project that was conducted by Duke University, where they'd gone through and interviewed hundreds of African American people who'd lived through Jim Crow. They wanted to record their stories before they passed away. And so I'd worked with her on that project and used those for my thesis. And then I came out here with my plan to further those and work more in this field. But then I heard that one little comment that said, no, you can't do it. You're white. And that was enough to say, she's probably right.
Oh, okay. All right. So then you go and you get involved in healthcare related research and you're doing it and you're kind of feeling not fulfilled, but still doing what you think is the right thing to do as an adult. Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, what did it feel like for you in this middle of what somebody else could say was success, and yet you're feeling counter to that?
Yeah, so interesting. And I look back at that now, that statement. I'm like, oh, I bought into one statement of one person and let that guide my entire life. But, I do believe that everything happens for a reason. And I had to walk through what I needed to walk through to learn the lessons I needed to take with me. So, and a lot of so it was fascinating to me too, was reproductive health. I did a lot of studying about Margaret Sanger and, birth control and everything that went around those. So being able to work on those types of studies was always really interesting to me. And I liked that. So that, I was just kind of, it depended on the study, which study I was funded to work on, But then COVID hit. And everything came to a standstill in my life. So I had 2 daughters by this time. Same marriage. I've been married 26 years. But the routine stopped because I would just, instead of focusing on, what it was I couldn't do, for years I couldn't sleep. Like I would wake up at 3 a.m. every morning and my mind was just racing and I didn't know why. And it was all this thinking of dissatisfaction in the background.
Yeah.
Why was I dissatisfied? Why was I waking up with this feeling, wake up, I feel dissatisfied. I should be satisfied. I've got this cookie cutter house. I've got a decent job. I've got 2 great kids. I was very involved with their lives and their school and the activities, and I should be satisfied. But there was this voice that I wasn't satisfied. And it wasn't until COVID hit that everything just stopped. And it just got quiet. The routine stopped. No driving kids around. I couldn't cover up myself anymore.
Gotcha.
It's like, yeah, that's what it was I was busy in the habit of just lifing. And so I didn't really get a chance to just be quiet with myself and figure out something's not right. I've got to actually address this. So COVID comes, everything comes to a standstill, and there's the film The Secret. It was just laying out there, like I didn't even have to go look for it. Weird. Yeah. But there it was, and I popped it in. And this time it was like a gut punch to me too. Just like my dad years ago. But
Yeah.
this it really hit me. And so I started doing research on all the teachers in that film. And I was drawn to Bob Proctor because he'd been studying and working in this field the longest. But all of them had such great stories of rags to riches, being at the bottom of life and creating magical lives. So, but yeah, it was Bob Proctor's story that really pulled me, and that's where I went. So, are you familiar with Bob Proctor?
Just from you. I think it had come across my radar maybe during grad school or after, but then I was reminded from you. But please do tell more about Bob Proctor and The Secret. Yeah. And then we'll catch up to, and then what happened?
Then what?
You were working in this thing, and then what happened? Yeah. Okay. Please enlighten us. Yeah.
So Bob Proctor was featured in the film The Secret. And his story was he was born during the Depression. He was kicked out of high school. His family was poor. It was a single mom raising 3 kids by herself during this time. And he was kicked out of high school, not just a dropout. He was kicked out. He spent his nights drinking at the bar, and he spent 10 years bouncing around from job to job. He couldn't keep a job. He was just going nowhere. And it wasn't until one of the most influential men in his community in Toronto pulled him aside one day and said, "I've been watching you, and you've got to be one of the most miserable people I've ever met. You're always broke. You're always asking for money. Look like you're just miserable." He says, "Your way's not working. Why don't you follow my way?" And he gave him a copy of the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Are you familiar?
Totally. Yeah. It's down here as a foundational. Where is it?
But at Think and Grow Rich, right?
Yeah.
So the story of Think and Grow Rich, really quick, just for viewers if they haven't read this or heard of it, is the author, Napoleon Hill, was a reporter who was working on a paper, just a small paper, nothing of significance, but the paper assigned a few of the reporters to go out and interview successful people to learn their secrets of success. He was assigned to interview Andrew Carnegie, who was the world's first billionaire. And of course, Napoleon thought, why would he accept an interview with me? I'm nobody. But he did. And he met with Napoleon for quite a few hours. And at the time, Andrew Carnegie was he's older now, and he was looking for someone to create a recipe book for anyone to create the success he had. So in comes Napoleon Hill, and he's got all these great questions, and Andrew Carnegie's thinking, this might be my guy. So he invited him back to his place, and they spent a few days together just talking. And he said, "Now I've told you all that I can tell you about my life. What would you say about dedicating the rest of your life to interviewing the most successful people and creating this book, creating a recipe for anyone to create success?" And he didn't know it at the time, but Andrew Carnegie was holding a stopwatch under his desk. He was going to give him just 60 seconds to make up his mind. And if he couldn't give him that answer in that amount of time, he knew he was not the man. But Andrew Carnegie gave him a yes. Within, it was like 20-something seconds, he said yes. And now Andrew Carnegie told him, "I'm not going to fund you for this. You're going to have to do it. You're going to have to find a way to do it yourself." And back then, I mean, cars were just new. Transportation was, it wasn't easy.
Yeah.
So he had to go home and like, what did I just do? I'm not going to get paid. I just signed up to do this, and I'm not going to get paid for this. And it's interesting that Andrew Carnegie didn't offer to pay him to do this, because Andrew Carnegie was so wealthy and he was so generous. And he knew part of the secret of success was generosity. So why didn't he fund Napoleon Hill? And I haven't heard this, but I think it's because he knew Napoleon Hill wouldn't go deep into this if it was just surface, and if he funded his trips, if he funded everything, he wouldn't do the deep dive into this. So Napoleon Hill spent over 20 years interviewing successful people, and he interviewed 500 of the most successful people out there. Amazing names, and the Rockefellers, the Wright brothers, you name it, the names are in there. But he came up with, after interviewing all these people, he interviewed thousands of people, not just the most successful, but he learned the threads to success are only 13 principles. But there are 29 reasons to default. And if you buy into these 29 defaults, then you won't make it.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, that's what he did. He learned in these. So he's principles of Think and Grow Rich are pretty straightforward. You've got to have a desire, a burning desire. You've got to have persistence. You've got to have faith. You've got, all these things. Okay, that's not surprising that is in this book. But it's the deeper stuff that's in this book that I think he had to learn. So the deeper stuff, things like spirituality, giving, working with energy, vibration, auto-suggestion, all of these deeper layer things that came out that are these main principles too. So yes, he just taught you, okay, these are the principles, take it or leave it. So I'm like, when I learned about this book, I'm like, wow, this is powerful stuff. I was talking to a friend of mine who got his MBA at Duke, and I just assumed that they would teach this in the business schools, but he said they don't. And I said, well, why? If this leads back to all these these are the threads of a success, and it leads back to Andrew Carnegie, why wouldn't they teach this in the business schools? He says, it's because of the spiritual factor.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine what your life would be like if your career aligned with who you are, what you do best, and actually fueled the life you want. At Next Success, we support all ages and stages through career transitions, from students exploring majors or careers to job seekers actively searching or reimagining their next move to professionals committed to self-awareness and leadership growth. Stay connected and explore what's possible at nextsuccesscareers.com and follow Next Success Method on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook.
Yeah. And so anyway, back to Bob Proctor. So he was, Ray Stanford gave him this book. He said, Napoleon Hill spent his entire life writing this book. It would do you a lot of good to spend your entire life reading this book. And so he started to reading it. And, Bob didn't listen to a lot of people. I mean, he was mostly stubborn, but he was so tired. He just said, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And so he really took this to heart. He could see Ray Stanford was living the dream life. So, okay, I'll follow this man. And he started studying it, and he's like, well, what do I do? I have no education. I have no business experience. And Ray told him that doesn't matter. You don't have to have an education to be successful. And so he learned there was good money in cleaning, so he opened a cleaning business and started cleaning offices on the side. He went from earning $4,000 a year to $175,000 that year. And that was 1961. Then he took it over $1 million just a couple years later, which in today's dollars would be over $10 million. So all of a sudden, he's just like, how did this happen? So he was giving people the book. Here, read the book. This is what I did. But he saw it wasn't having the same effect. he's like, oh, he noticed other cleaning businesses were not as successful as his. So what was it about him? He wanted to know. He really wanted to know. So, I mean, he could have just lived his life making all this money, but he decided to offload his company, and he went and worked with Earl Nightingale, who was directly mentored by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
And he spent 5 years with Earl and then spent actually the next 10 years learning really the psychology. He really wanted that understanding of why it happened for him and not other people. And so, yeah, for 10 years, he just studied this and tried to understand why. And it wasn't until he came up with the concept that really sunk it all into place. He learned the concept and then he spent the rest of his life teaching people how to do this. 63 years. He just got up there on that stage and went for it. And he decided this is what I want to do with the rest of my life, is help other people. And so he didn't know how it was going to happen, but he said, he just sat down with a pen one day and he said, I'm going to build a company that operates all over this world. And he did it.
And so during COVID, you refind The Secret. You pop it in, you become fascinated with Bob Proctor's story. You start digging into that. And still in that time, you're in this quote successful job with this cookie cutter house and this what some could say is a dream life, but you're miserable. So now you find this example of The Secret, so many people's
Right.
stories introduced to Napoleon Hill and all of these others, and Think and Grow Rich and Andrew Carnegie and Earl Nightingale. And now what effect does this have on you and your life and what you chose to do next?
All right, before we get into what I chose to do next, there was one other question I had from
Okay.
that book, Think and Grow Rich. It didn't address racism. And I thought, oh, God, there's so much that happens in this country around racism, that people are the, darker colored skin are the last hired, the first fired. Opportunities are blocked everywhere they look. But it wasn't really addressed in Think and Grow Rich. And so that really perplexed me. He's saying anyone can do this, but he's not seeing this aspect. He's not addressing this aspect. But then one day I was listening to, after I'd read the book, I was listening to Earl Nightingale talk about the story of S.B. Fuller. Are you familiar with him?
I mean, I've heard the name, but that doesn't mean that I'm not recalling as specifically about S.B. Fuller, but I know I've heard.
Okay.
Why have I heard the name?
Yeah. So here's another story.
Yeah.
So S.B. Fuller was a black man. He was born to sharecroppers in the South in Louisiana, dirt poor. And of course, money was a struggle for them. During the Depression, his family decided from the time he was little, though, he knew he wanted to do more. And he started selling soap door to door from the time he was a kid. And he learned that, that was a great way to make extra income. Soap is something everybody needs. And so he started as a kid in the world of business and sales. So, but his family left Louisiana, moved up to Tennessee when he was just a teenager. His mother passed away, and his father wasn't great at taking care of the kids. So that left him, he was the oldest one, to take care of I believe he had 7 younger brothers and sisters. And he was just a teenager. But he got out there, he supported them, and he was thinking of ways to make money. And so he found a company that would supply dresses, and he sold them to the domestic black workers in his area that mostly worked as domestics, But so they started buying his clothes, and it was generating him a business. But then when they would wear these clothes to their jobs working for white households, they were told if they bought their clothes from S.B. Fuller that they would lose their jobs. Yeah, so
How does that make any sense?
right? How does it make any sense? So they are bringing back these dresses to SB and they're saying, sorry, we can't buy from you. Just because they didn't want a black man cutting in on their business. They didn't want a black man moving into the world of money and being successful. So, most people and most black people would have just said, that's it. That's life in America for us. But not S.B. Fuller. He just decided, all right, this is not my place. So he packed up, he got his family together, and they moved to Chicago. And he, again, this was during the Depression, so he got a job working with steel. I believe it was the steel mills. And he was doing such a good job that the owner there said, "Gal, I'm so impressed with your work. If you work like this for me, I'll take care of you and your family forever." That did not sit well with SB. He was like, "I don't want anyone taking care of me or my family." And he just quit. Here it is, the Depression. He had this job, which was hard to come by. And he said, no. And he left and he started a business. He moved into the insurance market, started selling insurance. And then he came across an article that showed him that more money was made for somebody else that was in or other people in the cosmetics, in the soap, in that field. And so that's the field he went into, was that. And he made such a screaming success. He became, a multimillionaire. He carried 2 books with him. Guess what those books were?
Think and Grow Rich.
Right. And the Bible was the other book.
Because I'm like,
yes, he carried those books with him and he studied them. And he lived by those principles of what makes success. He was not going to let anyone stand in his way. And that's what Think and Grow Rich is all about. The obstacles will give way as long as you're focused on your goal. Just keep focusing. Just keep the idea and let the obstacles fall away. And Earl's definition of success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So you're a success as long as you're moving toward your goal. It's only when you give up on yourself, that's when you become the failure. That's when you fall into failure. So he just started off that way, and he started buying other businesses and theaters, and, he grew really wealthy. And he was the president of his chapter of the NAACP. He worked to improve the conditions and improve the rights of minorities, but that didn't stop him from pursuing his goal. But he was always criticized for saying, well, you're not doing enough for the black men, or you're not doing enough for our rights. We should really be focusing on the laws. He's like, yeah, okay, let's get the laws changed, but at the same time, don't divert on your goal. In fact, during the Montgomery bus boycott, he's like, great, you brought the bus lines to their knees. Why don't you buy the bus lines now? So that we can, grow our economy, so that the black population can grow the economy and have that power base. They didn't take him up on that idea. But his whole mission was, okay, think better. There's all kinds of obstacles out there, and all you have to do is focus on that end game. But yeah, he was criticized a lot for not focusing on only changing the laws and advocating for equal rights.
Okay, so how does this translate into you figuring out and making a lot of changes for your own growth and development?
Right.
Yeah.
So Bob Proctor, he's people pay thousands of dollars to attend Bob Proctor seminars. They'd fly from all over the world to attend his seminars. But he would be the first one up there to say, 97% of you are going to go home and do nothing with this information, because you're going to go home and you're going to get stuck on the how. The how is not your job. You just have to let go of the how and know that as long as you take the steps, the how will emerge. So he has a program that was designed by Sandy Gallagher. She met him about the same time that The Secret was made. And she was a very successful banking attorney, did billion-dollar merger deals all the time. Her company sent her to a Bob Proctor seminar, and she thought it was just a leadership seminar. But she went and she said what he had to say blew her mind. And right then and there, she decided that she wanted to work with him, and she was going to create a program called Thinking into Results that people could apply where they are now. They didn't have to come out to his seminars. It was designed with a trained consultant, with the principles he teaches, and with the design that goes along, that matches their principles. So I enrolled in Thinking into Results. It's a 6-month program. Within the first 2 months, I got the job I wanted. My salary doubled. And I was able to make these big life changes. I was able to support myself, get a divorce, do all these massive changes in my life, just move on. It happened so fast, I was hooked. And so I went back and I decided I wanted to work with them. And stepping into those trainings with the rooms of millionaires, people who were very successful, my whole life I'd been taught that wealthy people are evil. Wealthy people use poor people to make themselves wealthy. It was all negative. But all of a sudden, I'm in these rooms with these very successful people who are very generous, and they're very kind, and they're very spiritual. And all of a sudden, my ideas had to crumble. They just kind of fell away. It was like I felt, like in that imposter syndrome. Here I am,
Yeah.
just the daughter of a coal miner, stepping into this room of millionaires. And who am I? All of a sudden, I felt like I was the coal miner with cold smudges on my cheeks. But no, I've learned that it's, we've got it all, we've been taught these things, and all of the things that we are taught, you have to learn to question them. Are they really actual? And why? Why do we believe that? Why do we believe that wealthy people are nefarious or only earn their money off the backs of the poor? And why do we think money has to be hard? Why do we think success has to be hard? Why do we think it's out there somewhere and not here? And so, all of a sudden, this has just clued me in onto wow, this is very powerful. And I'm no longer just satisfied with my job, even though, I love what I was doing, but I wanted more now. I wanted to teach other people this. When you learn this, there's just something in it that you just want to help other people too.
Okay, so you end up becoming a consultant for a lot of this seminars and helping other people have the same method that you had such great results. And then what happened? Are you still doing that, or now you're doing?
No, that's what I teach. I hold these seminars and I teach the program Thinking into Results, the same program that I enrolled in.
It's awesome.
So,
awesome.
that's where I'm at right now. And I'm all of a sudden feeling like I'm meeting my tribe, because it's not about going to work and coming home and just watching TV.
Yeah.
It's all of a sudden I meet people that are like go-getters, and they have high ambitions. And that's what I felt. I really like, wow, this is what I was missing, because I would just come home and it's just routine to just unwind, watch a film, whatever. And I thought something was wrong with me. Why am I always have to be busy? Why do I have to be doing something all the time? And I just thought something was wrong with me. And it wasn't until I'm like, oh, finally, the world of business and the world of people that are hungry to achieve and get out there and make something. It was like, wow, this is fabulous. This is what I was missing.
And so now, from this new viewpoint, what do you view as success, or how do you view authentic success for yourself?
So it's all about listening to yourself, first, listening to yourself and not bottling yourself up. And that's something that I wish I could tell my younger self, not to listen to those little messages that can really steer you into a path of just bottling yourself up. And I always maintain that idea of what is success. Success is just the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. As long as you're moving towards something that's fulfilling to you, whatever that is, then awesome. I mean, when I interviewed the Wright brothers, their goal was not money. Their goal was getting up in the air.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you're moving towards something that gives your soul, your inner spirit, that drive, that excitement, that's where that's where the spice of life is. And that's what I got a lot with the near-death experiences, Going back to that is, what is the purpose of life? I heard one interview that was just really interesting, was just a man who passed away, and his experience was he was met with a man, he didn't know who he was, and he was shown a little boy who was just playing and joyful, and he learned the man next to him, he said he learned that it was Jesus, and the little boy playing was him as a little boy. And Jesus's only message to him is, you're not playful enough. Go back to that. Enjoy life. And that was it. That was the message. And, he was brought back to life after his accident. But that was it. I need to enjoy life more.
Well, it seems you're enjoying life beautifully. Every time I see you have this radiating smile, you're just drawing people to and around you. And so I'm so thankful about our conversation, being in the same area and getting to see you every now and then. But how do people find you? How do they work with you?
Yeah, well, thank you. So my website is elevatedthinking.net. My email, hello@elevatedthinking.net. I have seminars. I stage seminars every month or more frequently. And they can contact me to find out where. And then I'll be starting my webinars as well.
Awesome.
And I'm all on all the, all the socials. So.
Well, very lovely. Well, thank you so much, Jen, for sharing your story, for being a part of your next success. And I can't wait to continue to celebrate you and your next success.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. It's been a pleasure.
Jen, thank you for sharing your story, your wisdom, and your insights remind us what is possible when we choose to think differently. Thanks for listening to Your Next Success with Dr. Carolyn Sangal. Remember, authentic success is yours to define and includes aligning your career to support the life you want.